What is going on, guys? How are you? Welcome back to the channel and to another video. I know I say this quite a lot, but today's video is a bit of a premiere for the channel and a bit of a special one because the day has come. I have hands-on with my first Zelos. This might not mean much to some of you, but please let me geek out. Also, on a side note, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel and click that like button. It really helps the channel out. Really want to grow this little channel and produce more content for you guys. Now, I'm not telling you anything new here, but in case you've been living under a rock for the last few years and you have no idea who Zelos is, I'd suggest taking a long look in the mirror and rethink your life choices. All joking aside, they have established themselves a bit of a powerhouse in the microbiome world, and it's pretty much a given that every single time they release a new model, it instantly sells out, or worst case scenario, it goes on the pre-order early bird phase. It literally sells out then. And no matter how you look at it, to be able to maintain that momentum going with pretty much all new releases is pretty impressive. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the newest release of the Zelos Hammerhead version 3, and this is the titanium version, which depending on when this video will be released, it may or may not be available on the website for purchase. This variant we have here will start at $429, which is a very tasty treat when you think about it for a Zelos in this spec. Regardless, you can find the link down below to check for yourselves. Now, one thing I should say, I haven't had the stainless steel version, which is the previous version of this, to compare in hand, but this has lost a bit of weight compared to that, and while maintaining the same wrist presence. So we're basically looking the exact same. At first glance, you would expect this to be quite hefty on the wrist given the size, but it has a very manageable 153 grams size up to my 6.3 inch wrist. And the weight, I have to say, it's actually quite well distributed. Now, it is not much heavier than my baby alpinist in this case, on a stainless steel bracelet, but that thing is actually much smaller when you consider it compared to this. Since we're on the topic, let's take a look at the dimensions. The case diameter is 44 millimeters with a thickness of under 15 millimeters, just a smudge under 15, with a domed sapphire crystal, a lug width of 22 and a lug to lug of 49. But in this case, we have male end links, which take the overall distance between those two lugs to 52.6. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that this wears small through some sort of lug trickery, because it doesn't. I mean, the end links do point downwards and it hugs the wrist quite nicely, but no matter how you look at it, this will still look big. On my 6.3 inch wrist, this definitely looks like a 44 millimeter watch, which there's no denying that, but it doesn't feel like one, if that makes any sort of sense given the size. But if you take in consideration the fact that this is titanium, now that might make more sense. I had this on for 2 days straight with no problems whatsoever, so it feels very well balanced on the wrist. In terms of case, it has the same angular design as the previous stainless steel version and the same Zelos design features that we've come to associate the brand with. We have a matte finish all over with different levels of brushing along the angles that define the case visually. Also, I should mention the 1200 HV scratch resistant coating that will help protect this from any potential scratches. Titanium scratches easier than stainless steel. Now, what I would add here is that unless you actually have this in your hands, just by looking at it, you wouldn't tell that this is titanium, and I absolutely love it when brands manage to pull that off. At the 4 o'clock, we have the screw down crown with the Zelos logo that aids with the stated water resistance of 300 meters. And I will kind of stop here on that because there's two things that I want to add here. Big crown and great lume. I don't think people actually do take their watches diving, to be honest. I mean, deep diving with proper gear, but in this case, you actually have, if you are one of those people, this can definitely do that. And you can operate that crown with diving gloves. Well, just don't do it underwater. And speaking of operating things with diving gloves, I kind of want to transition and talk about the bezel, because that definitely needs a bit more grip in order to turn. 120 clicks, not a huge amount of resistance, and compared to other titanium bezels, this has a pretty consistent clicking action, if you could call it that. From my experience, titanium bezels can be a bit of a hit and miss, and some of them can run a bit or sound a bit hollow, but not in this case. Also, I should say that this has a ceramic bezel insert. The bezel is loomed with a mixture of C3 and a BGW9, and I almost forgot to mention that this aligns perfectly, and there is no discussion of any backplays or any of that in this case. One more thing before I move on, for some of you out there, and myself included, sometimes I kind of want to call it snobby behavior, and it all depends with bezels. It all depends on how much you pay for the watch, because I've never returned a watch because the bezel action wasn't as good as it's supposed to be, or the bezel wasn't grippy enough or clicky enough. I really want to kind of go away from that behavior, especially when you're talking about a watch that's under $500. Most of us will never use these watches for their intended purposes, so there is absolutely no point complaining about it. Now, moving swiftly along. Taking a look at the dial, again, we have the Zelos distinct look. The hands and indices all scream Zelos, and it doesn't take long for you to reach that conclusion after seeing it. The variant that I have here is the blue, and this is not your average dial. As Zelos would put it, this is a slice of titanium that has been PVD coated. Bear in mind, do not expect to be the coolest guy at the ball when you tell people this and get all the girls, but for a nerd like me, this sounds kind of cool. Now on the dial, the writing is kept to a minimum and it's simple. Zelos logo at the 12 and the model name, and the 300 watt stated water resistance at the 6, all in white. Also at the 6 we have the date window, and this is where I have my first niggle. I don't know what that means, but I'll use that word, which is more like actually nitpicking in this case. The date we have here is in black, which in fairness works well with the ceramic bezel insert, but I would have loved to see a colored matched date wheel. Does this ruin the watch? Absolutely not. It doesn't stand out in any kind of way, and it just does the job. Overall, the dial is big and sensibly laid out, and it respects the size and the character of the watch. If I can move on to one of the biggest features that I think everybody wants to see and kind of gets me a little bit excited because I haven't had one in hand up until today, is the loom. Whether it's price point or microband standards or anything, I think Zelos sets the benchmark. From experience, the only watch that I've handled as good as this is maybe the Signum Cuda. And that was, I don't think it gets close to this, but it's not as good. A mixture of C3 predominantly with BGW9 on the insert and the seconds hand. This thing is bright and it will outlast the sun. Well, if that comparison doesn't make sense, it means that it lasts longer and it's mega bright. The cool thing is that there is so much of it, and there is so much that is actually noticeable with very little exposure to light. I think it's absolutely brilliant. The movement powering this giant is the Seiko NH35, which to be fair is still the king in the price category, and for a very good reason. You should see the specs on the screen by now, which you probably know by heart. Mine was running at plus 9 seconds per day, which is nothing impressive, but still within tolerances. This will run at the same rate if you look after it for many, many years. So I won't spend too much time on this. And I will be moving along to the bracelet. Same titanium construction with the same angular design they carried throughout the entire watch. Screw pins to adjust, and if I'm not mistaken, this has the same hardening coating, so harder to scratch. And if you hit this on the doorknob, because let's face it, you will do that at some stage. Tapers down from 22 at the case to 20 where it meets the clasp. And yes, we have on the fly adjustment, and I know that it's becoming a thing more and more, but after having this, you really wish that pretty much all your watches could have the same kind of feature. The execution is superb, and the on the fly gives you another 10 millimeters of playroom, easy to adjust and very, very comfortable. And I mean, it needs to be given this size, and maybe I've already mentioned this, but the overall weight is very, very well balanced. Do I have any comments on the bracelet? Well, should it have quick release spring bars? I don't know. It's $429, and personally, I do believe that the watch is a whole package, and it actually looks really well on the bracelet, and it's actually quite balanced on the wrist. And personally, I wouldn't take it off. Is it a deal breaker for me? No, but it is something that you should be aware of. So to draw the line under all this, guys, what are my final conclusions? Well, it's a Zelos, it's very reasonably priced, and let's face it, you can pretty much do anything with this watch, taking the size in consideration and the fact that it is a titanium watch. You can actually, well, the only thing you probably might not be able to do is wear this with a suit and tie, but you can do that as well if you want, if you have big enough sleeves on your shirt. But what I would say is that from what I'm standing, the Hammerhead range just got a whole lot better with the introduction of the new titanium version. That was it from me, guys. That was my review of my first actually Zelos Hammerhead, the titanium version. Let me know in the comments section down below what you think about this new release, what you think about Zelos in general. Always appreciate your comments, and I always try and answer to as many as possible. Thank you very much for watching. Click a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't so, or if you stay until the end and you hear this message, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.